welcome to the evening. Spire, Stanford Professionals in Real Estate, is thrilled to be able to host this event in New York. We've held this event 7 times. This is our 7th season of the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame, and it's our first time in New York. So thank you, New Yorkers, for rolling out the red carpet on our behalf. My name's Elizabeth Youngblood. I'm the Executive Director of Spire, and I don't want to waste any time getting to the meat of the evening. The gentleman who follows behind me needs far more airtime than I, so I would like to take the opportunity to introduce David Hamamoto. He and his family are, I think they bleed red nearly, a couple generations of Stanford through and through. And then in terms of his real estate credentials, you probably all know him, but he serves as the executive chairman of Colony North Star, and he's known Dan for 30 more plus years. He'll tell you more about it, but I want to welcome David Hamamoto to the podium, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And that cocktail hour went a little long, which is always a little dangerous with me and then getting up on the podium, but I'll try to take my wife's advice and stick to the script. So on behalf of my co-chairs, Kia Buckley and Ralph Rosenberg, I want to welcome everyone tonight. And I want to say thank you to Spire for inducting Dan and Jim Bowie, our colleague, into the Stanford Hall of Fame. Quite an honor. Jim and I, unfortunately Jim's not here tonight, but he and I were in LA in the late 80s when I worked out there, and he's had an incredible career at Hines. But both Dan and Jim are very deserving of this award in terms of being part of the Stanford alumni and huge real estate leaders in the community. Fred Allen, who's here tonight, is going to speak a little later about Jim. He's a prior inductee, a long line of superstars in the real estate business. Buzz McCoy, who was, when I first joined Dan, one of our competitors at Morgan Stanley, has been inducted. And then Henry Segerstrom, who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, but he was my neighbor here in my building in New York, and just a great guy. So there's a long list of great people. And anyway, I want to thank all of you for supporting Spire because it's an incredible organization, and I'm so happy that this dinner is here tonight because one of my passions about Stanford has always been pushing to try to have Stanford have a much bigger presence here in New York. And as many of you know, John Hennessy, the former president, was from Long Island, and that was one of his big priorities. So I'm hopeful that Spire will be part of the catalyst to helping Stanford have a bigger presence here. And I'm hoping also that Bryce Love wins the Heisman, and that'll really elevate our profile here in New York. But anyway, tonight we're here to honor my mentor, Dan Neidich, and I'm just going to give a few brief remarks. Ralph is going to do the color. I'm going to do a little more of the play-by-play. But Brooke, John, and Mallory, I'm so glad you're here along with my family so that you can hear me share my comments about how Dan has had such a positive influence on my life over the last 35 years, and he's been an amazing mentor. I think one of the main things about Dan is his integrity, and that's a quality. And I don't want to get into politics, but a quality that's absent in a lot of our leaders today. Dan has really killed it in a lot of ways, both professionally and personally. But one of the things we all know about Dan is he loves golf, and he and I have played a lot of rounds of golf together. And there's a saying that 18 holes of golf will teach you much more about your playing partner than 18 years of dealing with them in business. And fortunately, I've had the pleasure of witnessing Dan's integrity, both in business and on the golf course, and it's definitely genuine. So that's a huge part of my relationship and respect for Dan. The other thing is that, despite leaving Goldman 20 years ago, the relationships that I built up over the years with all of you in Dan's department, have stood the test of time. And one of the amazing things for me is there are so many old friends that were here as part of that group. And I think it's just a real testament to Dan in terms of the culture and his leadership that he was able to create that type of community. The other thing is I'm really trying to emulate a lot of Dan's strengths, and I think one of the main things about Dan that I admire is his ability to balance his hard work, dedication to his family, athletics, and fun, and I've tried to do that for most of my life. Many years.
You've done better on the fun part.
I told Marty that I should throw that in, and she said no. But anyway, Dan was really an amazing mentor. I was a 22-year-old kid, and I was lucky because I was always on Dan's deals, and I loved that because it was such a steep learning curve. And working for someone who was so passionate about what he did was really an incredible experience for me. But I think about, a kid coming from Hawaii who was pretty naive, and I think that, Dan was the kid that taught the naive kid from Hawaii how to swim with the sharks, and it's something that served me very well over the last 30 years in my career. But he's always been super loyal and supportive, except for one time when he threw me under the bus, and I still remember to this day. On a Friday, Dan tells me, you got to substitute for me for a meeting, and it's tomorrow, and actually it's with Bob Rubin at Davis Polk, and it's to negotiate his buyout because he's leaving for government. And, at the time, cap rates were high, values were low, and Rubin was very unhappy, and I was the guy that had to go deliver the message, and so. In hindsight, it was a great learning experience, but thanks Dan for that. It's one of the many things that Dan's done for me. But anyway, I also the night wouldn't be right without also saying that one of his great strengths is also Brooke, who's been an incredible partner for him, and I think the work that both of them have done in terms of giving to the underprivileged and what they've done in the community, including at Stanford, has been huge, especially the way that they do it, which is quiet giving and not trying to get credit. And I think it's a true testament to both of them in terms of what they've been able to accomplish. So with that, I'd like to say thanks, Dan, for all your wisdom, and congratulations. And now I'm going to have Chad Hagel, who was actually a very important person for Spire, come up. He was the founder of Spire. He's still on the board, and he's class of '98, I think, and he's been an incredible part of Spire. So, Chad.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, David. When David talks about his interest and his commitment and his passion for Stanford and his desire to bring a Stanford presence here in New York, he really stands behind that. He's really been one of the staunch supporters of Stanford, particularly here in New York, and has been a great supporter of Spire throughout the lifetime of our organization. So I'm very, very thankful to him for being a big part of what got us here tonight. And that's kind of what I'd like to talk about a little bit, is what got us here tonight. And before I do that, I'll talk about what got me here tonight. I am not supposed to be speaking to you right now. I was on a plane last night on the way here and got a message from Elizabeth Youngblood, our executive director, indicating that David Butler, who is our current president of Spire and has done a phenomenal job of succeeding me in that role, is good news is that he comes from a private equity background, so he has a lot of experience putting out fires in his day-to-day job. Unfortunately, he's having to apply that in the real world. His family and his family home is based in Calistoga. And if any of you have been watching the news, you know about the horrific and devastating wildfires that are going on up there. I got an update from him just before I came. He has safely evacuated his mother as of yesterday, his brother as of today, and he's looking out for all of his family and business interests there. So our thoughts and our prayers certainly go out to David from our entire organization in this time, this very difficult time for him and his family. So on a lighter note, I thought it was fitting and appropriate that here we are in October, and Elizabeth had to make the call to the bullpen and bring in the right-hander. And here I am, stepping in for our current president, and I'm very hopeful that I get that ex-president effect, where the former presidents just get cooler once they're out of office. And I understand that Obama was getting like $250,000 for every one of his speeches after being in office. So, Elizabeth, you can send my speaker fee after this evening. I think that it is very, very fitting, though, that I've had this opportunity to re-engage and be a part of tonight's event, and I'm very honored to be able to be a part of it. This is really the culmination of a vision, not only for our whole organization and for our board, but something that I saw very, very early on in the founding of Spire. We actually had our very first event in New York during the first year of our existence in 2009, and that was an event centered around the US Open. And at that time, it occurred to me, and it became very clear, that Spire could never be what it was meant to be without having a strong foothold here in New York. And it was people like Dan and David and Ralph who really helped us establish that foothold and have been staunch supporters, as I said, have taken us to the next level through events, activities, and just helping to grow the network here in New York. Until tonight, fast forward, 2,300 members of Spire later, several regional chapters around the country, and here we are looking at an event that we've actually had some trepidation about for the past few years. When could we pull off an event like this in New York? Could we really make it happen? But I think it's a testament to the quality of our honoree this evening, Dan, the quality of and the energy of the co-chairs who stepped up to help make this happen, the quality and the energy of our staff, that we're sitting here with a sold-out room for an oversubscribed event in the heart of New York City. And we couldn't be happier or more gratified about where we've come from and where we are today and how we got here. So just a very quick note about what Spire is, so those of you who aren't familiar with the organization know what brings us here tonight. Spire is the de facto alumni association for people in the real estate industry for Stanford. There is no actual educational program at Stanford in real estate. Many people aren't aware of that because the university has such a long history in the real estate industry and a long history of graduates who have been very successful in the industry. But when we started out, we were somewhat of a rogue body and have now become embraced and were characterized last year by Howard Wolf, the president of the Stanford Alumni Association, as the single most successful alumni group in the history of Stanford University. And we're very proud to be that, but what we're really proud of is our continuing mission and the three pillars of the organization that it was founded on back in 2009 and it still adheres to today, which is alumni networking, student outreach, and educational program development. And that last component, educational program development, is one of the things we're most focused on now, being a part of Stanford's strategic plan for its next decade and where the university is going, and helping to be a part of reshaping the landscape at the university to bring in a real estate education program that will ultimately be our physical home at the university. A couple of the programs of Spire that we're most excited about and that have been most successful are the SREC, the Stanford Real Estate Council, and the Hall of Fame. We're in the 7th year of both of those programs. Many of the individuals in this room are members of the SREC, including both of our honorees and two of our co-chairs, David and Ralph. But the real reason that we're here tonight is because of the Hall of Fame induction for our Dan and Jim. And one of the things that is important to point out is how much these two gentlemen really reflect and embody the qualities of a Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame honoree. They have built a legacy as pioneers within the real estate industry. They have really touched the lives of those around them, both professionally and personally, and I'm sure every one of you in this room can testify to that. They have shown a true commitment to Stanford, and they have shown dedication to family, because for us, we really consider the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame as a family affair, and we're honored to be joined by Dan and his family this evening in paying tribute to him. We are also joined by several other distinguished guests. Our three regional directors for New York are here: Peter Saganek, Marty Schechter, and Emily Jones. Several members of the Spire Board of Directors are here. In particular, I'll call out Wayne Brandt, who is the Managing Director of Real Estate Capital Markets at Wells Fargo. Wayne is our incoming chairman of the board and will be taking on that responsibility in January. We are also joined, interestingly, by Rosina Miller, who is the director of the Stanford and New York program, as well as a couple of her students who have joined us this evening. Could you guys raise your hands, the students who are in the audience? And Rosina as well? There they are. So we're very happy to have student representation because, as I said, student outreach is one of the most important aspects of our organization and one of the things we're most proud of. As an interesting footnote, Stanford and New York program is very much in a growth mode right now. They're growing in terms of their presence here in New York and creating a real opportunity for Stanford to have a stronghold here. As David said, that's a really important goal, not only for Spire, but for the university as a whole. And there are opportunities for those of you in the real estate industry to look at this as an opportunistic circumstance in helping them to grow and helping to create a physical presence for Stanford and New York. I would also like to acknowledge our pillar sponsors who are here tonight. Many of these companies are represented in the audience, and I appreciate you being here. Seyfarth Shaw, Juniper Square, Marcus and Millichap, and Preserve West Capital. And I would like to acknowledge our newest core sponsor, and I saw Holly Niebuhr and her colleagues here this evening, and we're very happy to have AEI Consultants to have joined us this year as our newest core sponsor of the organization. And finally, I want to also recognize Fred Allen, who has joined us this evening, and you will be hearing from him later on. Fred is representing Alan Matkins, who is our founding core sponsor, and we certainly would not be here tonight if it wasn't for their great support and the support that they've provided to our organization from its very inception. So now you know why we're here, now you know how we got here, so let's all just enjoy being here. I'll let you enjoy your dinners, and we'll be back in a moment. Take care. I hope you're all enjoying your wonderful dinner. Sorry, got a hot mic coming from the hot table, if anyone saw our little fire display over there. So I mentioned earlier that we'd all be hearing from Fred Allen again. Fred Allen has several distinctions. He's not only a member of the board of Spire, he's not only a member of the SREC, he's not only a previous Hall of Fame inductee, but he is also, as I mentioned earlier, the founding partner of Alan Matkins and has really led the way in building the corporate partnership between Alan Matkins and Spire as our founding core sponsor. I'm going to be bringing Fred up here, and Fred, you can go ahead and make your way up. Fred is going to be standing in for Jim Bowie of Heinz this evening and speaking on Jim's behalf. We're very, very welcome, very, very honored to have Fred here to speak on behalf of Jim. And for those of you who know Fred, you know that to turn over an entire room full of people and put a mic in Fred's hands is always an adventure. So enjoy the adventure. Fred?
So I can only tell you Kathleen wrote this speech, and it's really short. There's two good parts about it. So is this on? Good evening. I'm here to talk about Jim Bowie, and Jim Bowie is our hero, and there are a lot of Heinz people here this evening, so I'll try to race on through this. I'm Fred Allen, the senior partner of Allen Mackins, a California-based law firm. And Allen Mackins is we are enjoying our 40th anniversary. So for 40 years, we've been kind of doing this and having fun. And I did it for maybe 10 years before that, before we formed this firm. And all the founders of my firm had one serious flaw. They all went to Stanford. So, but we overcame that. I'm happy and honored to be celebrating the induction of Jim Bowie of Heinz into the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame. I'm sorry that Jim can't be here tonight, but we are looking forward to his big celebration at Stanford University campus Hall of Fame event in November. Hang on, even I can turn pages. We are very happy to welcome a large group of colleagues and friends from the Heinz New York office, including Ken Hubbard, who hired Jim Bowie in 1980. Welcome, Ken. I don't know where Ken is. Hey, Ken. Okay, what a deal. So you made a great choice when you hired Jim Bowie, as you well know. Ken was responsible for generating and overseeing new development and opportunities on both the West Coast and the East Coast for Heinz. Jim worked initially on East Coast on the West Coast as a project management team, developing 101 California in San Francisco, though he continued to spend a great deal of time supporting Ken's efforts in the New York office and trying to get New York City going. Since joining Heinz, I'll get tired reading all this good stuff. Jim has been responsible for the development, acquisition, and management of more than 100 million square feet of commercial real estate. And hang on, a little turning of pages here. Representing over 23 billion in value. Highlights of Jim's career with Heinz include the development of 101 California, Salesforce Tower in San Francisco, Figueroa at Wilshire in Los Angeles, Embassy House in Beijing, and One Museum Place in Shanghai. And a short sidelight here, I was reaching for a Time magazine once in the Tokyo airport, and it was in the 90s. And the only other, I ran into Jim. He was doing Beijing, and I was doing something in Shanghai. So I know he's put his time in out there. Welcome also to Colin Shepard of Heinz, who I hope is here. Is Colin here? Don't see Colin. Anyway, Colin is the head of, CEO of Heinz Investment Management, who's also with us. I was going to be with us tonight. Colin and Jim have worked closely together as a team for over 25 years. Jim and his wife Mary have been married for 42 years, and they currently reside in Marin County in San Francisco. They have two children, Courtney, who earned her Bachelor of Arts in International Relations from Penn, and her master's from Stanford. And their son, Andrew, hang on, a little turning of pages here. We need more sound effects. Hang on. And it just graduated from Duke. Let me see what he did. He got his Bachelor of Science in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Duke in 2017. What a guy. So Jim earned his BA in economics from the University of Virginia in '74 and his MBA from Stanford Business School in 1980. And I have to have a little flashback here about how I first met Jim and first got involved with the great Heinz people. So I met Jim and the Heinz organization in 1980s when we were representing our great client, Mitsui Fudosan of America. Mitsui, a blue chip worldwide developer, owned a prime piece of real estate in the heart of downtown LA and was looking to engage a world-class development manager. Mitsui selected the Heinz team consisting of Jim and Colin Shepard and the great Heinz team to supervise construction, leasing, and management of the building after completion. This was really a deal made in heaven. I can't tell you what a great deal it was. And it worked. It was on time and on budget. And Heinz later bought the building several years later. The building, the Figueroa Wilshire building, which is mentioned, in Jim's resume, is still recognized as, we think it's the best building in Los Angeles. Mitsui and Heinz have continued their great relationship. And I would like to welcome John Westerfield, who is with us today, from the CEO of Mitsui Fudosan America, who is here tonight. So, now to the important stuff, other important stuff. Again, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome Jim Bowie of Heinz into the Stanford Real Estate Hall of Fame. Jim sincerely credits this award to Heinz and his great Heinz teammates. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ralph Rosenberg, and it is with great pleasure. Let's give it up. It is seriously with great pleasure that I welcome all of you here tonight, and really want to echo David's comments about the importance of this evening, not only to Spire, but really to honor Dan. So I think I represent a number of people, both in the room and who aren't here tonight, who have been the incredible recipients of Dan's mentorship, both professionally and personally. Like David, I went to work for Dan at age 22. And I spent the first night of work at Goldman Sachs in September of 1986, pulling an all-nighter and sleeping on Dan's couch. The next day, Dan and I had never met before, but Henry Cornell and I had to present an analysis to Dan. And immediately I was struck by Dan's incredible intellectual capacity, his intensity, his thirst for getting it right. And from that day on, it really has been literally a 30-year relationship that has been incredible for me and for many of you in the room and outside the room in learning from Dan and being around Dan in the professional setting, we spent, we used to joke, more time together than we each spent individually with our wives. During the period of 1990 to 2004, I think Dan and I spent 12 plus hours a day together working on incredible transactions, not only here in the United States like Rock Center, and in Canada, Cadillac Fairview, and globally building Archon. But we also had the incredible good fortune of having a relationship that really gravitated from a professional relationship to a personal relationship very quickly. When I came back from business school, Dan, by the way, he doesn't remember this, but he wrote my application for Stanford Business School. No, let me say it differently. Henry wrote it and Dan signed it. But don't tell admissions. When I came back from business school, Dan and I found each other in Central Park at 6 o'clock in the morning in September of 1990. And from that day forward, we literally ran together 6 miles a day for close to 14 years. And that was an incredible moment for me, the beginning of that relationship, where I could really learn from Dan, not only on that 6 mile run professionally, but we talked about everything from raising children. I was in Dan's office when Brooke went into labor with Mallory, to my relationship with Kim and how to manage the work-life balance throughout that 14-year period of time. So the infectious nature of Dan's commercial acumen, his intensity for getting it right, his perfectionist attitude, and most importantly, as David mentioned, his really moral high ground and his reputational integrity really served as the lighthouse, effectively, or the guiding post for how I crafted my career as a kid out of college all the way up to what I've been fortunate enough to create in my current position at KKR. So it is every day that I think about Dan's tenacity and his integrity and his ability to dissect a problem in a Socratic method that really has motivated me and has inspired me in terms of how I run the business with the team that I have today. On a personal level, I would say Dan has been incredible to me and to our family. He, in terms of my career during the 1990s and beyond, whenever we had a tough day, Dan would look at me and say, "Let's go," and I knew what he was saying. We were going to Nobu for lunch and to Bubby's for pie. And whenever we flew to California, he would walk up to me on the plane and say, "Don't eat the dinner, we're going to Shinhwa in Santa Monica." And he made it fun, and it was a great roller coaster from time to time, but a great personal adventure along the way. As we had children, and Kim and I met and had the benefit of having Dan and Brooke as our sometimes siblings and sometimes parents, we were infectiously driven towards or drawn towards their mentorship and their leadership. From how we picked our pediatricians to, whenever we had a family crisis, to being neighbors in the Hamptons, Dan really took it personally to inspire us and to really help craft who I am today. And so it is really incredibly fitting in terms of my relationship with Dan that I have the honor of being up here tonight to really say to all of you that anybody who has had the opportunity to be with Dan, either professionally or personally, it really has been a treat. And for those of you who haven't, you missed out on a lot, and hopefully you'll get a seat at the table one day. But it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the Stanford Hall of Fame. And I think we're going to roll a video, and we're going to hear from people in the room and outside of the room. So thank you very much.
When I walk around Rockefeller Center, I'm amazed that private people could have created it. What an amazing accomplishment, and in some ways a gift to the city that it's still there. That speaks to private development, it speaks to philanthropy, it speaks to preservation. We're all lucky to have it.
Once you know him, extremely friendly, extremely engaging.
He kind of cuts through, I don't know how to say it. I would say he's kind of got a stony exterior.
He does have a sense of humor.
He's actually really funny.
He's really goofy.
He's a terrible dancer.
He's that rare combination of a trustworthy person, bright, articulate. He probably would hate me saying that right now.
You want the truth? You want to hear it straight? Talk to Dan.
Dan is one of those scary, smart guys who, as you're saying something, he not only gets it, but either improves your idea or questions your thesis before you finish the sentence.
Real estate's complicated. You have to be willing to zig and zag. Dan was brought up by a dad who was in the real estate business. If nothing else, he got it by osmosis.
You know, I remember we were on a vacation or driving somewhere, and we'd veer off and go look at properties. They would always tell us to do whatever we were passionate about or whatever made us happy. But once I went to business school, I knew that I'd want to try to be in real estate. Citibank offered me a job in real estate banking, and I accepted it. I had interviewed at Goldman when I was at Stanford and interviewed with Goldman again after Citibank. And then I went and worked for my father for 2 years. Then a friend of mine said, come and speak to us at Goldman Sachs again. And this time, during the interview, they made me an offer, I don't know, maybe an hour later or 5 minutes later, I accepted.
Dan was a brilliant guy. He had real intellectual horsepower.
He's a person who sees the globe rather than looking at the globe and thinking the world is flat.
Dan is very well suited for real estate because of his ability to create and nurture relationships. I don't really know what his IQ is, but I'm going to bet it's very high. As importantly in this business is having a high EQ.
Daniel was always able to identify value and work through the necessary ingredients to allow the firm to have a significant role in the real estate markets across the globe, actually.
I had, in my mind, 2 very successful careers within Goldman. One, building a real estate investment banking business. I moved over into Whitehall.
I had actually returned from business school right before we set up the Whitehall funds. In my opinion, Dan's greatest accomplishments were associated with things that we did in the 1990 to 2004 era. Under his leadership, we created a lot of, at the time, what were considered to be, the most innovative and largest and most complicated transactions in the real estate space. We bought Westin Hotels. We established a formidable, if not the most prolific, non-performing loan platform in the world. And we really pioneered, under Dan's leadership, what is now a household term, which is the real estate private equity business.
Whitehall funds were a tremendous part of Goldman's success in the late 80s, early 90s.
I had to write the numbers down because I couldn't remember if it was 6 million, 6 billion. I mean, it was so over the top.
Dan was clearly the leader, the creator, the visionary.
In a short time, it became the largest privately held real estate opportunity fund in the world.
And we did some pretty terrific transactions. I think we're actually sitting in one of those places right now, Rockefeller Center.
Dan was instrumental in making that deal from Goldman's point of view.
The Rock Center deal was sort of an extraordinary deal, and with lots of complexity and lots of issues and lots of challenges. And then at the end, it worked out really well.
What I liked about Dan was that he was very straightforward. He was very clear in what he wanted to accomplish. Dan's creativity, combined with his intelligence, is what makes him one of the greats in the industry.
And I think that my dad has a really strong character. I don't think it was about the money so much as it was more about winning and losing. Anybody who's golfed with him specifically knows that he's incredibly competitive with himself.
Dan could buy houses with the golf lessons he's had. He's playing well, he's very fun to be around. If he's not playing well, he's not so fun to be around.
He's just that A student. He's going to get that A.
He definitely seems to intimidate people on first meeting. He had a very famous handshake move, which is he would sort of shake your hand and walk away from you at the same time.
He comes across a little intense, and sometimes people misunderstand him. I think he's actually a lot of fun. And particularly he's got Brooke, because Brooke is somebody who really softens Dan and really is fun. I think Brooke is one of the keys to Dan's success.
Sometimes you get lucky in life. We've been married for 36 years now.
We met on a blind date. It wasn't a date I wanted to go on. I opened the door and thought, I should have washed my hair. I just thought he was cute. It was chemistry.
She challenges Dan. She expands Dan's horizons.
They really balance each other out. They're kind of the perfect couple.
At Goldman Sachs, they used to call her the talent. People love being with her.
Because of the way he worked, we were on the telephone much more than we were together. And Daniel said, we're just going to get through this. And he always said we. Everything was we. I don't even think I thought about it until later in a conversation. Then I thought, we.
Keeping up with her has been a terrific experience. She has great passion for her causes. She's been as instrumental as anyone in building the Whitney Museum downtown and created the Child Mind Institute. I used to say that before I met Brooke, I had uncashed paychecks on my kitchen table and I felt really rich. We don't have uncashed paychecks anymore.
Brooke is on the board of Lincoln Center Theater, my theater. I can't tell you how many audiences I sit in. It's always like, oh, the husband doesn't really want to go to the play, but the husband, I mean, I know this is cliche thinking, but I'm afraid it still goes on. Dan loves the theater. He loves going to see plays. He takes theater very seriously. And they go all the time, Brooke and Dan.
Long after the business career fades in people's minds, the things that these two have done to help other people will live and reverberate in the future.
He seems to be one of these guys who's able to balance all the other things. He's devoted to his family, to his kids.
The kids I've known since they were babies. I remember when he and Brooke first bought the East Hampton house, and we were at a conference in Connecticut, and he invited me to fly back to see it. And baby Mallory, she must have been 2, ran into his arms, and I never expected Dan to goo-goo gaga. Beneath that consummate professional exterior was a mushy guy who loved his family.
The children just adore him, and I think they all get him and they all respect him, and they're so different. Stephen was a visual arts major. I mean, he just loves Dan. Mallory's super thoughtful.
I think that for a lot of people, he's this really serious and intimidating character, but for us, it was never like that. He's really loosened up over the last 15 years. You normally want to get like a tequila in him, but then he's incredibly funny, and he's got this dry, deadpan humor.
It comes in this very quiet, witty way. Sometimes it takes people a couple beats to understand, particularly me, the joke that he made.
For us, our dad is a lot of times like the funniest guy in the room.
We have great homes and a great family, and that's just because of our marriage and really Brooke.
I feel really lucky, and as we grow older, I feel even more lucky.
When he retired from Goldman, people would ask me, what's your dad gonna do now? And I would tell him he's just gonna sit on the couch and eat potato chips, which was like the biggest joke of all time.
I thought that to have my own business would be something I'd want to try.
I've been at Duke for 10 years. I actually met Dan through a headhunter. The headhunter called and asked me about another position. I wasn't interested in another position at all, and in some ways, almost as an afterthought, I said, "Would you ever want to have lunch with Dan Neidich?" And I said, "Now that I'll do." A lot of people I respect thought that Dan was one of the smartest investors in real estate, but I also heard he was a good guy.
So we met, and I don't know if she saw it the same way I did, but I thought it was pretty obvious that she should come work with us.
Hearing Dan articulate things about our business and the investment environment was really eye-opening for me. I thought, okay, I think this is going to work.
It's a business that as long as we think we can make decent returns, we're allowed to pretty much buy anything we want. We've done a number of transactions. The Standard Hotel, we built on the High Line before the High Line was the High Line.
Dan had the vision to back Andre Ballage's vision, and they built this thing technically in the middle of nowhere. It was a little build it and they will come, and they came.
Probably the 56 Leonard condominium is as interesting and as challenging and as rewarding as anything I've done.
From an architectural perspective, it's quite extraordinary.
This was a transaction that we started before the financial crisis. We owned it through the financial crisis, and then we built it after the financial crisis.
There are not many good stories that came out of development deals that were committed to prior to the crisis.
Sometimes I call it a 7-year overnight success.
In a lot of ways, Dune is a boutique, and people often tell us that we walk with a much bigger footprint than that boutique suggests because of who we are as individuals.
You're trying to find people that other people want to do business with. I think we look for people who can interact with people and will relate to people.
He's an incredible relationship person. He has, I think, a passion for creativity and vision.
Yes, it's about making money, but we represent pension funds, endowments, foundations. The most important thing for us is that we help them be successful.
Now, when you know someone for 35 years, you have lots of stories, but the thing I would just say, it's been my honor to be his friend.
Honesty and integrity are really essential to success. I am proud of what he's done. I'm really proud of what he's done, but I'm more proud of who he is.
I should have walked a little slower up here, but it's a good lesson for next time. I'm Mallory. I'm Dan's daughter. I'm the youngest child in the family, and I'm also the only girl, and that's basically all you need to know about me. Thank you to the Stanford professionals in real estate for honoring my dad tonight. My family and I are really happy and grateful to be here with all of you to celebrate my dad. The video does such a wonderful job of bringing my dad to life through the anecdotes and the remarks of my brother John and some of my dad's closest friends. And I think it's clear from the video that some things come really naturally to my dad. He's always understood numbers and math. But I think it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that everything comes naturally to my dad. And I'm here to tell you that that is not the case. His golf game, for example, is a source of continuous disappointment, followed by relentless dedication. And it's been that way for as long as I can remember. As I'm sure all of the golfers in the audience know, golf is an elusive game whose secret is always within reach of one more lesson, one more book, one more online tutorial. And if you are as persistent and as single-minded and as competitive with himself as my dad is, then you are in for a very challenging and a very unpleasant journey. As you know, there are breakthrough days. One of them was yesterday. My fiance would be happy to tell you all of the secrets that my dad bestowed on him yesterday afternoon. But while golf represents for my dad a kind of always becoming, as I said, there are some things that do come really naturally to him. Something that might not be as obvious as his knack for numbers is the fact that he has this really innate understanding of what it means to be a good dad. Growing up, you take for granted your parents in general, but you also take for granted the kinds of parents that you have. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized that my dad's curiosity in my life and his investment in my life and the lives of my brothers was just different, that there was something unique about how present he was in our lives and how much his presence informed how we understood ourselves as people and how we understood our roles in the world around us. In a lot of ways, my dad is really the moral compass of our family. He has, as you heard in the video, he has this amazing ability to ask the hard questions, the difficult questions, and even more importantly, he has the courage to do what's right, even when it isn't easy, and especially when it's not in his self-interest. More than anything else, I think that parents are teachers, and my dad and my mom have been my brothers and my most challenging and most nurturing teachers, showing us not just how to live in the world as individuals, but also how to live in the world as partners with the people who we love. My dad really wouldn't be who he is without my mom. My mom also wouldn't be who she is without my dad. And I think often that when two people have the kind of partnership and the kind of romance that my parents have, the success that they have in life is really enabled by the fulfillment and happiness in their personal lives. So to me and my family, I think that tonight is as much a celebration of my dad's career as it is a celebration of the curiosity and empathy and boundless love with which my dad lives his life.
I'm not sure I understood when I was going to be honored that I would be honored quite the way I have been tonight. So it's, it can be a little humbling. So not everything that's been said has been true, both positive and negative. Anyway, I'd like to thank Spire for honoring me tonight, and the idea that we're pulling the Stanford community together, I think, has been very valuable. And I'd like to thank Elizabeth Youngblood and Sydney Brooks for their work in terms of making this happen. And obviously my co-chairs, my former partners at Goldman Sachs, David Hamamoto and Ralph Rosenberg, and my current partner, Kia Buckley. And a lot of people have worked really hard to make this video that you just watched, and I have a couple of observations. Actually, I'm not sure what to make of some of the statements made about me. When I watch the video, I come away thinking I may be funny, although it doesn't seem there's a tremendous conviction here. I also see that I may be smart, but again, that seems to be said to excuse certain other deficiencies in my personality. And frankly, I couldn't help but wish that people were as effusive in speaking about me as they were in speaking about Brooke. Having said that, it's nice to hear my son
Thanks, Don. By the way, I have one business school friend here tonight, Don Dixon, who just shows that sometimes you can have a relationship that lasts a while. Having said that, it's nice to hear that my son John says that I can be the funniest person in the room, even if I need some tequila. However, and importantly, the video shows a career that I'm proud of and grateful for. And as Jerry Spire mentioned, I grew up in a real estate family, and once I decided to pursue business, I knew I wanted to be in real estate. And sort of growing up in that environment and meeting real estate developers and entrepreneurs, and I thought that the industry would provide a chance to one day pursue my own entrepreneurial ambitions. And I was fortunate both professionally and personally to have a chance to work with my father for 2 years. And then my career at Goldman Sachs, where I spent 25 years, was challenging and rewarding. I met and learned from really incredible people, and as maybe tonight shows, I was able to make a difference in the careers of many people who worked with me. And I think both of those statements are clear from the video. And then starting doing Real Estate Partners allowed me to create a company of my own. And again, it's been challenging and rewarding. And again, I've had the fortune to work with an incredible group of professionals. And I don't know how many younger Spire members are here, but I was asked to sort of spend a moment talking about, what do I think kind of allowed me to be successful, at least as I saw it. And I thought what was important was that I found a place where my skills matched what was required. And I think it's important to be honest with yourself as to what you're good at and find a place where those skills do fit with the success of the organization. I think I was also always very good at knowing what I knew and what I didn't know. And I was able to understand what I did well and find people who could kind of complement me. And I think you saw a lot of people in the video who provided that support. And then when I went into positions of leadership, I understood that in order to be a leader, the people who work with you have to want to work with you, they have to trust you, and they have to believe that you can help them build their own careers. And finally, I think it's important to understand what allows you to be successful, what your talents are. You're always going to meet people who seem to work fewer hours, who may not be as diligent at returning phone calls or emails. Of course, no one that I know. But it is important to understand that what you do well and make sure that you don't think that you can repeat other people's successes if you don't have those talents. And while the business success has been rewarding, it has also allowed Brooke and me to give back, sometimes more than I would like. Andre Bishop spoke as a friend and as the head of Lincoln Center, along with Prep for Prep, the Child Mind Institute, and the Whitney Museum. These have been our principal philanthropies, and we feel fortunate to have been able to make a contribution to really such extraordinary organizations. And lastly, I would turn to my family. Brooke and I have been extraordinarily fortunate. And while I don't necessarily fully agree with the video that Brooke is the only reason for my success, actually the last person who thought that was her father. Clearly, it's true. Without Brooke's support and the support and understanding of my kids, I never could have pursued the career goals with the focus that was important. So again, thank you for Spire. Thank you for everyone coming here. And if they ever ask anyone to be a dinner honoree, understand that you're going to be subjected to the kind of treatment that I got tonight. So thank you.
Welcome, Dan, and congratulations. This is my favorite time of the evening just because there's so much good feeling in the room. And so take that good feeling and put it into your desserts, which will be out shortly. And we'll end the evening after you've had a chance to sort of add some more calories to your body. Thank you.